Welcome everyone to FinTech Week 2022 and our event today by Accenture and AI Austria in collaboration, Applied AI Conference. We're doing this today talking about FinTech and guiding you through leveraging data and AI, boosting financial services. It is my pleasure to host you here for the second year. This time really focusing on data and AI. And why are we doing this even as Accenture and supporting the ecosystem? Well, we think it's extremely important to bring together the local fintech ecosystem, the data and AI ecosystem, and bring also international insights. As Accenture, we're supporting both the large corporates. So today you will be hearing from banks, you will be hearing from insurance companies. We're helping them on their digital and innovation journey. But also fostering collaboration cases between startups and large corporates. We're also supporting fintech scale-ups in their journey towards scalability and boosting their services in the market. It is really my pleasure to have you here today, Clemens, as AI Austria. And before we kick off, let's still thank also the organizers of the FinTech Week, so Vienna Business Agency, FinTech Austria, and also the Austrian Bankers Association. We're here live today with you online, but also everyone that is here as participants. Looking forward. Clemens, AI Austria, a few words from you.
Welcome to the future. No, just kidding. Yeah, thanks a lot for showing up here physically and also to the audience online who is watching from YouTube and LinkedIn. Actually, this is the third time we are hosting an event during the FinTech Week. So 2019, it was still physical. Last year, it was online. So what happens if you go from physical to online? In the third year, we make it hybrid. When choosing a partner, of course, it was very, very obvious that in order to have the international speaker lineup, you also need a company with a global footprint. So I'm very happy that actually the Banking Association put the two of us together, as you will also see the program later on. Maybe a couple of words about our association, because you might have heard from Accenture, but I'm not entirely sure if you have heard from AI Austria. We are a non-profit organization. We were founded in 2018. So you could say we are like very strong when it comes to regulation. You might have heard of the AI Act and so on, meetups and so on. And one thing, or let's say one of the projects we developed over the last couple of years is the AAIC, the Applied AI Conference. This is this logo that you see in the upper left corner all the time. And this is now the 14th event we're conducting. So last week actually was our big annual event. And we also have like satellite events like this one, where a satellite is perhaps the wrong word, because sometimes we have 1,500 people tuning in online, even for the so-called satellite events. So without further ado, I would hand over the word to you, Natalie. So you walk us through the agenda of today and also do a deep dive which speakers, and last but not least, the housekeeping rules. So thanks a lot, and also thanks to you for showing up.
Thank you, Clemens. Exactly. So what will we be hearing today about? Let me switch over. So we have three different parts, because we think we wanted to give you a little bit of an insight into different aspects of data and AI, because it's so varied. There's many applications. We all know about the wording, data is the new oil. But is it really insights that we gain? We think we only gain insights when we apply it properly. And that's why we wanted to deep dive with all of you into different cases. So we will start with, we have a little bit of a switch in the agenda. So we will actually start with a case around customer service, and we'll be hearing from Georg Wenk from Paysafe. Then we will be jumping into a fireside chat between an InsurTech, Riskine, and a FinTech, Whoop by FinShape. And then we will be bringing you a little bit of an international panel. So we will be hearing from Skyhive, that is a North American startup, talking about HR, skills and talent, and how to apply data in that space together with our colleagues from Canada and the US and UKI. And then we will all wrap it up with, how do we actually manage this internally? How about the data governance? How about data mesh? There will be a panel, and also with different banks and insurance companies from here locally. And we will be then also hearing from Philipp Eigner from our practice, and RBI, Erste Bank, Unica, and Felix Klemm. So we hope we have an interesting lineup for all of you. And now a little bit to the housekeeping rules, like you said. So why do I have my phone here? No, I'm not looking you up on LinkedIn. I'm also not posting new TikTok videos. I'm actually following Slido. So we would like to really foster all of you to bring in your questions in Slido. So you can already do the QR code. You can also pick the code. And please, during the whole event, both you online and all of you here, join us to post your questions, your Q&A, and we will also have a few polls. Very important, this is all recorded. We hope we have all of your consent. Both you online, you can then follow us B2Match LinkedIn. You can also watch it later on. So B2Match, another platform where you can also interconnect with everyone that has registered to do a little bit of networking. So we're really looking forward to this event today. Clemens, thank you so much. And let's kick it off.
Thank you. And may the force be with you.
Thank you,
See you.
Clemens. Good. Like I told you, Slido. So please go onto Slido. Well, now you see me, but I hope we can switch very quickly to our Slido questions. So the question that I would like you to answer is basically, how do you use data and AI in your organization? So please post your words. How do you use it? For HR? For customer service? Not at all. What would you like? Foresight. Someone was brave enough to post. Not at all, yes. Someone had the same thinking as I had. We hope you will change it after listening to today's speakers. Insights, product recommendation. Lead generation. Customer value, customer analysis, CRM. You use it every day. I would like to hear from whoever posted that later. This would be an interesting one. BI. So we actually hear a lot different insight. We hear a lot about customer. So really looking forward to what we will be hearing also from our speakers later on. Compliance, reporting, knowledge sharing. Great. We see product recommendation, CRM, and BI is the most one that you all chose. Good. And then, because we heard about customer service and customer service automation, I would like to ask on stage Georg Wenk, please join me here while we slowly switch over to your slides again. My colleague will bring you a micro in a second, then you have that as well. So Georg, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you are head of CRM and data science at Paysafe. And you'll be sharing with us your story, your case. We really asked you about your learnings and your journey from an ideation phase where you were talking and looking through cases to use in data and AI towards really an implemented case throughout your company. And what we found so interesting is that Paysafe, you are now, of course, a huge organization, payment provider. You have different products and offerings, but at some point you were still small, you were growing, and nevertheless you were looking into cases for data and AI. So this is, I think, an interesting insight. And so now is your few minutes of glory. We are looking forward to your insights to this interesting case, and I will join you later for all of your questions. And please remember, ask your questions. You have time Q&A in Slido to pose all of your questions. Please, Georg.
Thank you for the nice introduction. Okay, so good afternoon. Yeah, my name is Georg Wenk. I'm going to show you what we as an organization learned over 4 years of using AI in production. I hope there will be something that everyone can take some value out of and maybe apply in your own business. So, and sorry for any scientists, but I'm going to use machine learning and AI interchangeably, and just mean, what businesses are doing with this, applying computational statistics on large data sets, to find patterns, make predictions, and these kind of things. Just a second on Paysafe. We are a payments company, mostly online payments. We are focusing on markets that are highly regulated, and we are in the Vienna business unit. We are focusing on digitizing cash, so trying to making it available for customers to pay for online purchases in cash. And since we have got a few banks here as well, we also partner with financial institutions, for example, N26. So this is a neo-bank that doesn't have a costly branch network, but they can use our extended network of point of sales to allow their consumers to deposit money to their bank account or withdraw money from their bank account, and they don't need to run branches or ATMs. So our AI journey started in 2017, and basically it started with a naive question. So AI is a nice, fancy technology. A lot of companies are applying it with some success. And what can we do with that? And you might notice that this might not be the best approach, because usually would have to identify a business problem first and then find the right technology to solve it. And a couple of companies in the recent years fell into this trap when they tried to find a use case for blockchain. But in the end, this approach worked out for us. And yeah, so now we've been using it since 2018. We at Paysafe, we're using AI in different domains. We're using it to detect fraud and money laundering. We use it in customer segmentation for marketing. But today I'm focusing on our use case in customer service, because this is the one that I'm most familiar with. We started off in 2017, and basically what we did is a workshop, a design thinking workshop, to find use cases where we can apply AI and prioritize those use cases. And we immediately saw that this customer service use case that I'm going to explain was the most important one for us. So we did a proof of concept. We saw that our first approach might not be the best one, so we had to redesign and only then go to implementation. And we had great support in this process from Accenture. So the outcome of this is Roby, our customer service robot. What it does is basically we receive messages from our customers in our customer service team. Usually they would be dealt with manually. And we built something that can automate some email replies here. So we achieve two goals. One is, of course, reduce manual work and cost. Customer service is expensive, especially if you have a lot of customers like we do. And also we get a reply back to the customers quickly. So they don't need to wait a few hours until an agent gets to the case and deals with it and replies. And I think we achieve both. So how does this work? Okay, I thought it would come in step by step. So sorry for overloading you with a big slide now. So I'm going to try to point out the pieces that you should focus on. It goes from left to right. So we get customer service contacts in different channels, but we're going to focus on the written channels, emails and web forms, and ignore the others. We want to see the messages that we don't know yet what it is. So customers say something like, okay, I can't log in, or my account is locked, or how does a product work? Anything. And so we get some text. And we feed this into our message classifier, which is the actual AI piece. And I'm not going to in the technical details for this. Maybe this is for later for the Q&A. But anyway, we noticed that the texts by themselves are not usually very expressive. So customers tend to write us very short messages, not always be very clear. So we needed additional information to actually find out what they need in an automated fashion. And this is where this piece comes in. So we take additional information from our backend application, from our payment application, on the customer and the customer's transactions. So you can think of any kind of account status or the last transaction's error codes, something like this. And then the message classifier gives you a topic. So what was this message about? Was it a login issue, for example? And it gives you the confidence of how sure the model is that this is actually really a login issue. And then we move over to the rule engine. So we feed this into the rule engine, which is not AI. It's just criteria defined. And we look up certain criteria. So can we actually send an automated email for this topic? And are we sure enough that we actually do this? Because we don't want to spam customers with irrelevant emails. So we try to target this. And if this gives us then an email template, we're going to send. And the customers receive this email. And we are explicit that this is an automated email. We are saying, yes, this is Robo or customer service robot. And if this does not solve the customer's problem, they can still just reply, and the case then goes to a human agent. So this now has been live since 2018. So I'm trying to summarize what we learned as an organization on how to implement this, how to run this over the years. And I hope there is something that you can take from this talk. And if there's one thing you take from this, it's actually this one. The commitment from the subject matter experts, from the business, this is really crucial. AI is not a technology topic. It's something for the business. If you don't have the commitment and the time committed and the support from the business itself, in our case, the customer service experts, who know our customer service processes, who know the customer problems, who know how to solve it. Without their support, you won't do anything useful. The best data scientists won't give you a great implementation without this support and commitment. And you don't just need them during the implementation phase. You also need their support on the long run. So my suggestion would be to actually make person in the business responsible for this, to drive the improvements, to expand the use case, and to do the maintenance together with the technology team. But the responsibility should, in the end, lie with the business, because it's something for the business, in this case, the customer service department. So they should drive it. Without their support, it won't work out. Next one seems obvious. If you're doing some kind of modeling, you need training data, usually a lot. And you need it early because, as you probably also know, if you do any AI implementation, you're going to test different approaches and find out which is the best, basically based on your own individual use case. And you might think that you have the data because you might have collected a lot of data over the years, but that might not be true. At least that's what we learned, because we use data that changes over time. So as I mentioned, the customer's account status, for example. It doesn't help me to know the account status now when I'm training a model now. I need to know the customer's account status at the time when they sent us the message. And if you think about not just one account status, but 40, 50 more features in this model, so you can imagine that you need to build some infrastructure to collect this data, and then probably wait some time. For us, it took a few months to collect enough data to actually train the first models that were successful. Yeah, next up is the theme of skills. So development for data science in the sense of applying the statistical libraries in Python or R is not the same skill as general software development. If you have a great data scientist with a lot of statistical knowledge, that's great, but it's not might be the right person to implement even a simple application, a simple but production-grade application that wraps an AI model into a web service. These are just different skills, and maybe you're lucky and you find some person that does both, but this might not be true. And if you have bigger teams, bigger projects, then you probably don't have this issue. But in the long run, if you want to just maintain a project, an implementation, you might not have the same varied skills of different data scientists as you had during implementation. So keep this in mind. Next up is, if you're running this for some time, you might notice that the KPIs that you apply on your model, so that the KPIs that you optimize your model for, might no longer be the right ones. Over time, business changes, customer behavior changes, products change. At least that's how it works in our business. So you have to review this from time to time. And again, based on our example in customer service, there were two changes over time. First, we basically optimized for accuracy, meaning the model should be very good at predicting the topic. But to send out the automated emails, we also needed a high confidence. So the model should also be quite sure that this is the correct topic. So now we optimize the model for both accuracy and the confidence. And another change we implemented is that first, we try to identify as many topics as possible. So we had a classifier to try to distinguish about 35 classes or so. And of course, the more classes you have, the harder the problem gets, the lower your accuracy will be. But we don't want to send an automated email for all the topics that we receive. So we merged similar topics into buckets, reducing the number of topics that the classifier has to distinguish, and so increasing the overall accuracy a bit. And then something quite specific, again, to the theme of skills. We used basically, first is Azure Machine Learning as a platform. And now we're exploring Amazon SageMaker. And these are very similar platforms, cloud-based services that allow you, to train models, to do all this stuff that you do for this, and host it, maybe even expose a web service and these kind of things. So feature-wise, they're not that different, at least for our use case. But they need quite different skills to actually use. Whereas SageMaker very much follows this infrastructure as code approach, meaning it exposes APIs, and you need to write some code to integrate these APIs, to build a pipeline to your definitions. Azure Machine Learning follows a very low-code approach, so you might only need a few scripts that you insert into a visual workflow. So make sure that the skills of the people that you have and the infrastructure that you're using actually match. So for us as an organization, and I think this will be similar for most companies that start off on this, AI is a journey in the sense that you might not want to get out a big implementation that has all the bells and whistles, but rather release something that works, but release early. Be transparent about what it can do and what it cannot do, and then learn from this. So you will learn that it takes some time in the business to just for maintenance. And this effort is something you need to calculate with in the beginning. Use an iterative approach if possible. Add use cases over time. Don't try to do everything at once in the beginning. I guess this is a learning that's similar to other software development projects, but here it's definitely also worthwhile, especially if you haven't used this technology before. And this one is basically just meaning AI is just another technology. It's not a magic bullet. It won't solve a broken business model or bad processes. It won't double your revenue just by itself. That's not going to happen. So you really need to know what you're doing here. And you need to apply it where it really makes sense. Just to give it some perspective, in this message classifier that Roby, the customer service robot, uses, the message classifier is only right in about half of the cases. This doesn't sound great, but if you compare it to random guessing, which would only be 2% of cases, that's quite good. But this also means that we are not handling the majority of customer service cases automatically. The majority is still handled by humans. And actually, we also need the humans for labeling the data, so that they still work on cases. They still say, okay, this is this topic, this is this topic, this is a login issue, this is a payments problem, whatever. Because we use this as training data. We have to retrain every couple of months to adapt to the changes in the business. The product might change, all these kind of things. So don't expect anything magic. It's not magic. even if though there's a lot of overpromise going on, when it's marketed. But it's just another technology, and you should treat it as such. So now I'm coming to the end, actually, already. So we have been using Roby for 4 years now. It's sending automated emails. It's earned back its operational cost, at least, quite quickly. Running this on Azure or SageMaker is not expensive. Human manual work is expensive. Even if you outsource to somewhere where labor is cheap, it's still expensive. So if you have any use cases where the volumes are there for the training data, do investigate it. But we also found that we had a lot of use cases identified where we then found out, okay, the volumes were just not there. Maybe your business isn't selling thousands of times per month. Maybe your business isn't doing this operational process thousands of times per day to get to the volumes of data that you need. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you, Georg, for the views. I think there was something in there for both the large corporates and then also for like the scaling ones. And why am I mentioning the scaling ones? Because you said it's a journey. Yeah. So what is the right timing from your experience of starting with this journey?
Basically, when you identify a problem that you have, and it might make sense to introduce AI. If you're referring more to the size of the company or the age, then I would say, if you're a very small startup, of course, there might be something, your business model might be something that has a lot of volume in some area. I don't know, you have an app and you have a lot of users and something where you can apply AI. Yeah, maybe do it. Maybe you might need outside help for this. You probably will need this outside help anyway, even if you're a larger organization, if you have never done this before. Or you might just take the approach and hire a lot of data scientists and do that. But I guess this is kind of a hard challenge. At least it's my experience. If you're growing, so I mean, just to give you some perspective, Paysafe is larger, like 3,500 people, but the organizational business unit that did this is just like 250 people in Vienna. So in this context, we implemented this. It's not all 250 people working on this, it's just within this context. And this worked out fine, but we had the outside support. So yeah, it worked fine.
So that's maybe the right wording. How much was outside support? How much was in-house? Because this was the question from one of you, from the audience. And then also, how did you kickstart this journey? Also alone?
No, as I said, we got support from Accenture. And in the beginning, the outside support was the majority of the manpower and knowledge. And we only started to learn how to do that. And then hired a data scientist and started driving this on our own and phasing out the outside support. So, and this made sense for us as a business. In the beginning, we didn't have the know-how. We learned. Yeah, so.
And maybe can you share some KPIs? What kind of impact did it have on your company? It can be quantitative or qualitative as well. In your scalability, on your business model, what kind of impact did it have?
So specifically for this customer service use case, I don't have an ROI number for you. But as I said, it earns back at least the operational cost quite quickly. Because running computers is cheap. It might be harder to earn back the quite significant implementation cost in the beginning and the personnel expenses that you have. Data scientists are not cheap. And then if you look at other domains, like the fraud and money laundering prevention, this is something that we have to do anyway. It's a regulated industry. So it has an impact, even though some of these problems are very hard. If you think about fraud, it is a tiny amount of the business that you're doing is fraudulent. So there's not a lot of data. It's hard to get clearly labeled data saying this is actually fraud. To distinguish fraud from non-fraud is not easy. The same is even harder for money laundering because it's, even less. But it does have an impact. And here with customer service, a few % of requests are handled automatically. And we are adding additional use cases in the sense of emails and the rules for these emails over time. But this again, this takes time to come up in the customer service department, and then also to evaluate if the rules that are defined actually make sense.
And then just to recap, because you mentioned a lot of details already, but our participants do have some questions like, was this supervised or unsupervised? Like I said, you mentioned already a few things, but still to recap once more.
Yeah. So the modeling we used is supervised. So we have customer service cases in our CRM that are labeled with the topics. We had to change the label structure though. So in the beginning, the existing legacy topic list, so to say, was not suitable for machine learning. So we had to change this. This refers to the business being open to change the process, because it's a new process running next to and within their own processes. And in the end, it's a classifier distinguishing like 35 or so classes. We're looking at the text and additional features from a backend. So it's 2 steps in case you want to know. So one is NLP, logistic regression on document frequency versus inverse text frequency. The other way around, yeah. But you get the gist. So we look at the terms which are most relevant for a specific topic, optimize for this, and then on top of that, we add the account statuses or see if an account was actually locked for suspicion of fraud, and then add this. Yeah.
And then when looking back, is there something that you would have totally changed in your approach?
So there's one thing I would definitely keep. That's
also good. That's very important.
The iterative approach. So doing this proof of concept first, really seeing if the data that you have is actually contains information that you need. So, and we found the text alone don't do that. So that's where we found we needed the additional information from the backend system. Without it, we wouldn't get to the level of accuracy that we need. But what I would probably change is not try to predict the topic of the messages that we get, but rather try to predict which email reply we should send. So basically skip this rule engine part that I showed earlier, get the email message or the email template that we are sending back to the customers predicted. This might work, might not work, I don't know. It's quite a different approach, and we didn't test it in depth. Yeah.
And now we talked about we talked about the journey, and what about the future? What is coming next? So you talked about one case. What else do you want to try with your team? Where's the journey going?
So at the moment we are investigating basically more better focusing our anti-fraud measures. I can't go into the detail too much here, but basically we are locking certain transactions for suspicions of any kind, and we want to target this better. Also, we have generic, so basic rules in place, no machine learning at all, that also try to prevent fraud and other kind of bad things we don't want to have in our business. And we want to target this more than we already do. So any customer whose account will lock and they're actually a good customer will be angry. So we want to avoid this. We have processes to do that. We want not to lose customers because of this, but we have to do that. So we don't want that our product is used by fraudsters. We don't want that we get a bad reputation and business partners cut us off and anything like that. And also the regulators, of course, are looking very closely. So yeah, that's one of the things we are investigating now. And there will be other things later.
And you mentioned this is something for your area, maybe a tricky question, but still, you mentioned the regulators.
Yeah.
When looking into this area, is there any barriers, or is it actually something that helps you in your space?
Barriers, you mean, of course, you have to consider any kind of privacy legislation, like GDPR and so on. So you need to know that this is maybe another data processing use case that you need to make transparent in terms and conditions. So these kind of things have to be considered, of course. Otherwise, I don't personally know of specific challenges we had from regulators when applying this. But also have to say I'm not an expert on the use case in fraud and money laundering prevention. So these are other teams that do that. maybe they could say more to that.
And also maybe it's a learning journey as well together,
Sure.
With the regulator and us as a business, the more different cases progress. So thank you, Georg, so much for the insights that you gave. And for those of you that will be joining basically for the networking afterwards, we will have still time to exchange. So thanks so much, Georg. And looking forward to networking later. Huh?
Thank you very much.
Georg.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you, Georg. You can leave the clicker with me because we're going right in to the next session. And I see that someone actually from the audience wanted to still pose a question. But dear audience, if you could use Slido, that would be really... So the questions, not all of them we can answer now, but that's why we have networking after. And also you have our contacts to possibly check later on this. So this is not the case we will be hearing about now because we switched from Georg. So my little message now is that we have to move back to this case. Because why did we have to switch it over a bit? We have an international panel now. If our colleagues can pull up the speaker overview, please. We have Tamas Braun, and he flew in from London today. That's why we had to switch around the whole agenda. Tamas, please join me here. And then also let me invite Johannes Seebacher from Riskine as well. Perfect. Thanks for joining me. So, interesting panel. Why? Because you're very diverse. Let me give you this as well for the audience to be able to basically hear us. You're a very diverse panel because of different things. One, Tamas Braun, you're the head of international sales at WUP by FinShape. It's a merged company. You had BSC from the Czech Republic, and you had also WUP from Hungary. You merged into FinShape. It is all about digital banking, data-driven personalization. So this is the FinTech side, digital banking side. And then we have Johannes Seebacher. He will be more the InsurTech side from Riskine. They also, like we heard before, a lot about digitalizing customer experience, customer also advice, driven by algorithms and data. And you as CTO and founder also have a very technical background. You were a developer yourself for many years. And then also Tamas had a lot of insights from banks, JP Morgan and others that you worked with. So I'm really looking forward to this diverse topics that we will be hopefully discussing. Yeah. So what do we want to cover today? Why have I asked the both of you? First off, I would like to actually maybe start with you, Johannes, for Riskine. Why Riskine? What is your model? And why have you started it as a startup and not just joining one of the corporates?
So our founding idea was actually, so my founding partner, Ralph Whitman, also comes from insurance background like me. Both came from Allianz. And the founding idea came from his opening a letter by Allianz. I think it was, or a different insurer, to not make any, not give any bad names. And he didn't understand the policy update that he got. So he came from insurance, and he was working as a consultant for many years at Roland Berger insurance practice, and he could not understand why a certain coverage was added to his policy, and he wanted to understand why, and search for a digital tool to investigate that, and he couldn't find one. So that was the original idea, and so that was basically solve the information asymmetry that is prevalent in insurance, and especially in insurance advice. So insurance companies know a lot about customers, but they don't tell the customer. They don't want to. Is maybe not correct. Maybe they can't. Maybe it's too complicated. maybe it's too complicated also for the customer, maybe too complicated for the advisor to package the information. For example, how big is the customer's risk? So the customer is told a price and basically a recommendation, you should buy this product with this coverage, but not really the reason. So not your risk is like this and you should cover it like that. And this was basically the kickoff. And I mean, the reason why we did not start that in corporate is manifold, but maybe that there's an intrinsic reason, and that's insurance companies traditionally model this risk problem from their perspective, from a complete or aggregated portfolio view. And this has certain mathematical background. There's a huge theoretical body. Actuaries actually studied that myself. And if you take now the customer's point of view and want not to understand one line of business, as the insurers call it, and make a model of all the policies out there in this one line of business, but want to understand from the customer point of view all my risks, and then aggregate it somehow and make it understandable and get some insight out of it, then you need completely different mathematical models. And there's not the appetite and also not the theoretical background at insurance companies. And so that's why we went on this journey on our own, and also because it's more fun, in our opinion, at least.
That's interesting. So I'm really looking forward to what the insurance companies and the banks will be saying to this later.
Yes.
So, Tamas, how about your journey? Because digital banking, customer engagement, personalization, we hear about it so many years already. Is there still room? Why do you think as WUP or FinShape, you want to go into that space still as a startup?
Yeah, so I mean, clearly our history is in digital banking, right? Especially if we look at FinShape as a larger group. We have our colleagues and partners in the Czech Republic have been around from 1997, right? So they started on day zero in digital banking. And the idea between merging WUP and BSC was that now we're marrying a digital banking competency with data analytics and data and personalization. And I think that's very rare on the market. So if you look at large digital banking or AI or personalization companies, they all do their own special thing, which is either digital banking or AI. But we rarely see a company which is industry specific. It's created for banking, all the use cases, all the insights, and it's married together end to end to deliver a customer experience on top of this. Because I think that's the challenge for many of the banks, and we'll talk about this later when we discuss the challenges, is that yeah, AI is great, and I can fully resonate with Georg in a previous presentation that there are some challenges and lessons we can learn. But then I think one of the challenges is the so what? What do you do with that insight which you just figured out? If it's anti-money laundering or fraud, it's fairly simple. If it's customer experience, then the customers are looking at you as like, great, so what do I do with that? And I think that's our answer in FinShape. We'll help you with that as a bank.
And if you would need to describe yourself in just one sentence, what is your offering?
It's personalized digital banking. If I'd say anything else, marketing will cut my head off, basically.
Okay. What about you and Riskine? Do you have a one-liner for us? And the second challenge, a bit more deeper, what kind of data do you really use?
One-liner is intelligent digital advice. And maybe two-liner is B2B software as a service, and mainly focused on APIs, but also offering all the things around. And towards the data that we use, so we're faced with this challenge where we have to cover the complete spectrum of financial advice, and that includes insurance space, kind of the risk space, but also increasingly investment advice and also credit advice. So now you offer this to other players, to companies, and they have a very limited spectrum of that. So maybe one insurer focuses on health insurance only, etc., etc. So we have very diverse offering, And so this means also we use very diverse data, but I have maybe some good examples. And a place where we started is to take open source, open data sets to model natural catastrophe risk. So there's a lot of different data sets out there, open, semi-open, commercial, that we kind of began to stitch together. So you have to imagine geo data sets, which come in different forms and shapes. TIFFs, which are basically images. Then you have shape files and all sorts of things. And we stitched it together to a global model that can, based on geolocation, for example, predict what is the flood risk at your address. And then based on that, how should you insure against that flood risk?
So when you talk about use cases to the both of you, what were the most impactful ones that you've implemented with some of your clients? Impactful, a lot of thinking. I'm already seeing that.
That's a tough one, right? So
it is.
I think, you know, what we do in financial services is that we help banks and financial institutions to find the useful insights out of data. Now, the usefulness of that insight could be measured by the institution, the bank itself, in terms of, you know, whether you were able to do product proposition, upselling, cross-selling, all the other KPIs normally a bank would look at. And there could be very good impact on those numbers. So this is one part of it. And I think, you know, we worked a lot with Raiffeisen Bank International. We are working with them a lot. And there were some really good numbers in terms of conversion rates and the impact on the conversion rates of certain campaigns. So purely using insights, which we thought would be very useful to increase that KPI. So this is one part. And I think, you know, across different kind of campaigns to cross-sell products, this was very meaningful. On the other side, however, when you talk about the impact on customers, right? That's a bit more tricky, because how do you measure that, right? So a lot of our competitors, and we've seen many other use cases where they provide insights to customers on categorized transactions, like you spent 15% more on holidays than last month. And this to me is a so what, right? So thank you, I just booked my summer holidays. So why are you telling me this insight, which is not even AI? It's a very simple averaging, which an 8-year-old could do. So I think the impact on that is less. You have to do it as a basic, right? So I think some customers are eager to see information like that. But then you need to go one step beyond, because I think the reality is that data just doesn't sit as well as stories do, for example, in people's mind. Because stories would have emotions and data doesn't. So you need to package this up in insights or stories, and this is Money Stories is what we launched to do this, to actually resonate customers or to communicate or engage customers on these insights. If you don't do that, your AI will fall flat and your people will not look at this. I mean, customers. And I think that's the biggest challenge. So the success stories of that is that, for example, if you translate this to smart loyalty offers, which are relevant, meaningful, people actually care, and they're interested in that loyalty offer, you already won, and the impact is very measurable. So we've done something like this again with Raiffeisen International, one of the subsidiaries, which I think was very, very good. But you can go into carbon emissions, and it's a journey. We're not there yet. But again, to start that engagement with customers, to educate, communicate carbon emissions of their consumptions, I think that's another very good success story. If you achieve something on that level as a first step, you're already on the right path. And of course, you need to work on that. AI is a journey, it's not just a step.
I mean, Johannes, do you agree, or something to add on how to create this customer engagement, how to really get impact?
Well, I was thinking about it, and we at least regularly measure the impact on customers in service and things like that. And this is actually what I wanted to start with. And for sure, our most impactful product so far is the risk analysis, which is used in insurance advice and answering the question in an advisory situation for the customer by the advisor. Which risks does the customer have, and which insurance products does he need based on this assessment? And we started out not with businesses as customer, but we POC'd actually with the Consumer Protection Agency, with the VKI here in Austria. And so we really started from the customer side, and we always integrated this questionnaire, asking things like, do you understand your risks better on a scale from X to X, or is your trust in your decision increased? So this is I would say our most important KPIs on the customer side. And then on business side, of course, it's increased sales and less churn. So this is measurable very directly and for quite a few years now in a lot of our customers.
Maybe just listening to this, maybe there's a third one as well, which is the impact on the organization. Because a lot of traditional organizations are set up and structured in a way that they're not able to take advantage of all the good things we've seen here, right? So you need to create an organization structure which is able to understand data and to think data-driven. And of course, that's fundamental, right? So you could have little siloed team who would do marvelous things, potentially with a very good impact on both customers and the business. But if the units are not set up, or the structure of the bank is not set up in a way to take advantage of that, 95% of these use cases will not actually go into production. And that's a waste.
So basically insights around data cleaning, data governance, before you can really start the integration of new data cases.
Sharing, democratizing data, access to these insights, all very important.
I mean, is there anything else that you see as a barrier? Because both of your organizations work with partners. That's your model. So any other barriers on top of this data availability, data governance, and data cleaning when working with corporates?
I've got one which we call the integration hell. I'm sure if you're from banks, then you know what I'm talking about. So if you work with partners, nowadays everyone is API and interfacing with APIs and whatnot. But still it comes to a cacophony of different vendors from globally, from different parts of the world, going after their own agenda. And even within an organization, everyone is driving slightly different agendas. And when it comes to integration, it's just sometimes after a few years, it gets messy, right? So you have, again, different vendors, different solutions. Some of them are overlapping. Some of them are in direct conflict with each other. How do you make something out of that for something like this? How do you make sure that your data is governed, structured, created in real time in a format which potentially 6, 7, 10 different banks across your organizations or subsidiaries can take advantage of? That's very, very difficult. I think this is what we worked with our client Raiffeisen in the last 2-3 years, is to have a common data model and to democratize access to this by the subsidiaries of Raiffeisen so they can use this for different use cases. So that's I think, a very important structure to make this available to different use cases in different countries. And that's a barrier in a lot of organizations.
So making it useful for different countries, different companies.
Different use cases, different agendas, everything else, yes.
I mean, for the InsurTech sector, Johannes, it's very localized, oftentimes, also regulated in a sense, maybe different, you tell me, different than banking. So what are your challenges that you're seeing in terms of collaboration, in terms of scaling the solutions?
So I think in terms of collaboration, what Tamas said is true. So I, of course, don't see it from corporate's perspective. I don't have an integration hell yet. But it is a huge challenge to find kind of the right APIs. So this is something we're constantly challenging ourselves in. And integration is also part of our rollouts, of course. But it's a very, very generic challenge, not really pertaining to InsurTech. The thing you have in InsurTech is, or insurance in general, and this you also see in the standardization efforts that are going on in quotation APIs. So you have in many countries, you have one association standardizing the data model and the API structure with which you can digitally buy an insurance, basically. And this the problem is that the data is so complicated and has so much detail in it For example, how do you define a car or a house, and all the little Nebengebäude, the side buildings of the house, and how big are they, and what kind of equipment do they have? Does the swimming pool have a coverage, and those things? So you have this huge struggle on settling on a data model kind of, and there is no standard data model, so you always have to map everything. And there are many efforts going on in this direction. We also have thrown our approach into the field. It's called the Open Insurance Ontology. You can check it out on GitHub. Actually, we open sourced it. And this is one of our approaches to tackle this challenge, to put forward our standard data model and make it for use, make it open for use. But still.
And now I'll pick up actually something from the audience. So how do you harmonize, centralize the data or features across the organization on a data model? Because we mentioned before, data is often very local or very country specific. I think that this goes to both of you. Huh?
Harmonize.
Exactly. Yeah. Harmonize and centralize the data. How?
I think it took one of our clients, so again, going back to that example I mentioned, Raiffeisen, at least a good 6 months to figure out that common data model, which would satisfy a large number of use cases across the organization. And that was basically fundamental to ask the subsidiaries to comply with that common data model, to make sure that they get to a position of maturity in these subsidiaries to send some of them in batch, but some of them in real time data to this common data model. And once that's there, then you've got on another layer, of course, the models, the enrichments and AI and everything else on top of it, which then works with the same common data model. So theoretically, this opens up the possibility for one country to send the data into the common data model. It's hosted in AWS, by the way, it's all cloud. And then take advantage of use cases and insights, which maybe another country worked on, but it's very much applicable to that country as well, right? So this knowledge sharing would then start. And then initially it starts on a technology level that I can share insights with my other subsidiaries, but then people will start conversing and not sharing knowledge around these use cases as well. So I think this is the harmonization, at least from a technical perspective. But then again, going forward, this is hugely relevant to see what works, what doesn't work in certain geographies in certain countries, because there are niche use cases which might be very applicable to country X, which simply wouldn't work or wouldn't work the same way in country Y. And I think, no matter what the common data model or the algorithms or the use cases, if that thing which you're trying to predict doesn't exist in another country, then this is simply the performance of that model will not work, right? So then of course, it's a question of how do you make sure that people understand, which I think Georg talked about, that AI is not a magic bullet. You have algorithms, you have a common data model, you can look at the performance of that algorithm in different countries, different geographies, regions. But then you need to make sure that it actually is meaningful to your business or the business goal you're trying to have the case with that model.
Anything to add, Johannes?
Yeah, maybe we can go a bit deeper technologically here. So we currently follow the approach. Our data model in our house is super tight, extremely tight, and super strict across microservices. So we allow the very small teams to handle the microservices as they want, but have a super strict and tight data model. So, but at the same time, we have huge customers. So there is this proportion where we're about 30, 40 people, and our customers are 30,000 people. So they want to dictate how the API looks. So at the same time, we need capabilities for them to alter the data as they send it in. But as it passes a certain barrier into our world, then it's harmonized. And this we achieve with a very strict microservice architecture.
And now something we talked about basically your model. We talked about how to scale within organizations and collaboration. I now would still like to touch upon the future. What do I mean by this? I mean, if there are no constraints from organizations, if there's no constraints on budget, if there's no constraint on time to market, what do you still see in your areas to be the future of data and AI? What use cases? What applications without barriers? I want you to dream a bit. That's why they both have to think.
No, actually not. So this has been our long-term vision for quite some time now. Is basically for end customers to have some kind of agent on their phone or on their whatever that is capable of ingesting all the data that is living in all their other applications. So let's say a banking application, but also can go through their email and so on, which is super tight security-wise, and then can spit out real-time advice, but also prompted advice. So, and is able to discuss deeply about the decision, should I buy a house or not, and what could be the implications on various levels on my financial situation. And this whole thing would be offered as a service for financial service providers to use for their customers.
And if you can dream, Tamas, no barriers.
It's kind of related to that, right? So the reason why the big tech companies, the Googles, the Amazon, and even Apple, these guys want to get into, I'm not saying banking, but certainly payments or some elements of financial services, is because the data is gold in this case, right? So if you have a fundamental understanding of what customers do or how they live their life or how they spend their money, then of course you can better serve them, both within banking and outside or beyond banking. So imagine a situation, and this goes maybe not so far into the future, is that you're trying to book your holidays for this summer. A lot of people tend to go to booking.com and just search for a hotel in a particular location. Let's say it's Barcelona. Now, booking.com will try to recommend you hotels based on your previous booking, based on what's available, blah, 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 and a whole lot of algorithms are working in the background. If customers' understanding the bank's understanding of customer behavior is so good from transactional data, then why is it that the two are not connected? Why can I not go on to booking.com and get a hotel booking recommended to me, or a hotel recommended to me, which is according to how much I paid for previously for hotels, what kind of hotels were they, how often I go and visit hotels. It's all in my transaction history, how much I spent, how frequently, and so on, and more of the enrichment as well of it. So could I get an experience which goes beyond banking when I try to book my holiday that please, I get a hyper-personalized offer to my taste, to my wife's taste as well. It's all in the data. It's all in the insights. Just no one is doing it. So I think that's hopefully a not so distant future. And this is just hotel booking, but it could be many thousands of other things in life as well. And of course, data governance, data sharing, access to data, open banking, PSD2, all fundamental in this. And I think we need to agree on how this works. But to the customers, that's a big impact on how I book my travel holidays.
Mm-hmm. So still some room to go. I hear it from the both of you. Still some use cases and room to go. We only, I would say, touched upon the surface because the scalability in the future, basically in 20 minutes. But as promised to everyone that is participating today, you can still network and ask your questions later, and also to you online. And we will still pick up your questions as well, and you can connect to the speakers. So Tamas and Johannes, thank you so much for your FinTech view, not only listening to banks and insurance companies, but to really the startup and scale-up side. So thanks to both of you, and let's give them a big clap.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thanks for having us.
Perfect. Thank you. They're giving me the microphones. You can just put it down here. Yes, my colleague will pick it up. Too many things in my hands, trying to juggle all these different speakers. So what we will be hearing now, and let me see if I have to jump. Yes, because we switched around the agenda, I have to go through all of these slides again. So basically, what we'll be doing now is bringing in our international speakers. I hope my colleagues have them online already. I will be, yes, they're showing me that yes. So basically, before we jump into this case, I still have a question for all of you. So please pick out your Slido again, both you online as well as all of you, because we'll be talking about data, HR, and skills. have you heard and actually implemented? Look, they're switching very quickly, my colleagues. So have you implemented data and AI in HR talent or skills? Yes, no, not sure. I'm not sure what my company is doing. Possibly. I think I know what the winner is. The winner is no. And then it's not sure. And that's what we thought. It's not a case that we usually hear so much about. And that's why we invited our speakers here. And let me introduce them to all of you so you know who you are listening from. So basically, it's a trio, not from Austria, not from DACH. It's actually Andrew Garner here on the side. He is joining us from Accenture, UK and Ireland. He has worked in talent and organization, specifically area, as a manager for many years. And he will be sharing a specific case where this has been implemented, HR, talent and skills. Then we are having Petra, who is joining us from Canada. Petra is head of partnerships at Skyhive. Skyhive is a growing provider, growing startup that is really using different quantum labor analysis. They call themselves a platform to gather insights that can be reused throughout the business organization to really foster insights and skills in talents and to help the companies on their journey. And Petra will explain to us what these use cases are even about. And then we have a third one that is Mary Kate Morley Ryan, Managing Director at Accenture, joining us from the US today. And she has really joined various companies throughout their journey of implementing Skyhive. So we wanted to bring you these duo or trio of Accenture together with Skyhive, and they will be talking about real implementation cases. What have they done with banks? How has Skyhive worked with other non-financial services companies? And so without further ado, hand over to all of you and looking forward to your insights.
Awesome. Awesome. You guys can hear me all right, I assume. Awesome.
Perfect.
So, and Andrew, you can go to the next slide. I don't know if it's going to show up here. But as Natalie was talking about, yeah, this is a space where we're seeing a lot of investment and sort of evolution, if you will, of leveraging artificial intelligence as a part of the overall skilling process, or kind of more broadly with HR strategy. And just, part of why we're seeing that is just the speed of which change is happening, right? And it's also, this idea of making sure that we keep humans and people at the center. So we're seeing investments, across all industries really in this space. And you'll see a few of the case studies that we're going to highlight are not only within financial services, but more broadly. But these are some of the key reasons that we're seeing organizations really look at this space and seek to understand how they can leverage AI more broadly within the organization. So one is really keeping pace, right, with change and with what's going on in the world. Another is just really making sure that, you have the right skills for the strategy that you are implementing and what you're going after in the future. And you can see some of the stats beneath that. I won't sort of read the whole slide. The other piece is really being very prescriptive and very focused around specific areas of talent. So whether that's cybersecurity, oftentimes it's within the talent space or within the technology space, but also things like product managers and product owners and merchandising. Those are spaces where we're seeing a lot of demand in the market and not a lot of sort of skills just that are sort of ready for folks to plug into the open roles. So those are some of the key reasons I think that we're really seeing just this movement towards more of a skills-driven approach to people practices. And then more broadly, focusing on inclusion. So when we focus on skills and we focus on sort of the basics of what folks have versus maybe on pedigree or degrees or other sort of things that may exclude them from roles. This can drive inclusion much more broadly. You can go to the next slide, Andrew. So this is a little bit of our history with SkyHive, and Petra will kind of pick up from here in a bit. But Accenture invested in SkyHive through what we call Project Spotlight back in 2020. SkyHive was one of the initial investments that Accenture made as a part of this broader investment strategy. And that included also a strategic alliance around how we go to market and how we really think about this space. So I mentioned the importance of inclusion, the importance of, really thinking about your talent strategy from a skills perspective. And one of the ways that you can do that is leveraging artificial intelligence. So helping to remove biases and helping to create more opportunities for folks. So one of the things that, or one of the cases which we'll highlight on the next slide, and you can go to the next slide if you'd like, Andrew. Our initial piece of work was actually with the World Economic Forum, Walmart, and Unilever, where we looked across both organizations across very specific roles and looked at, what are some commonalities in those roles? What are some skill adjacencies? What is the market showing us around these roles? And how could we look at supporting people from moving one role that may be in less demand into a higher demand role, both within each of those organizations and then across them, with this idea of really democratizing the availability and the insights around skills, as well as really focusing on how can we bring more opportunities to people and drive more agency, let choice, let people really choose where they want to be versus maybe feeling stuck. So that's one of the case studies that I just sort of covered quickly. You can see on the other two here. I'll cover the bottom one, and then we'll cover a few more in a bit here. But the second one that I want to cover is on the bottom here, where we looked across the technology organization of a large North America financial services organization, and looked not only at what were the emerging skills related to the roles that we were focused on. So the company was really looking at what talent do they need in the future, what skills do they need to make that future happen. We looked at both the roles, leveraging SkyHive's capability within the organization, but then also looked at competitors and looked at kind of the broader market to understand, what might be gaps in the strategy around skilling or gaps in the broader sort of thinking around where we need to make some people investments. And then at the top right, very similar use case here. This organization was really looking at, what are the digital skills they need in the future across their entire business. So not just within technology, but within all functions. And we worked closely with SkyHive to look at what are the other organizations in this space doing? What are other organizations outside of this industry doing for those particular functions? And what are some of the skill paths coming back to the sort of skill adjacencies? What are some of the places we can find talent, and what ways can we sort of help them move into the roles that we know this organization is going to need in the future? So looking at both skill paths, skill adjacencies, and emerging skills in the market, so that that organization could start to make those investments now and not feel like they were sort of on their heels or, trying to catch up later. So those are a few sort of brief case studies here. And I think that, it's a good way to sort of, I think, understand how AI is being leveraged in this space. I want to make sure that it's clear that artificial intelligence and SkyHive is not the total solution. The human must be involved in the process, and it's absolutely a partnership there, if you will, sort of human and machine. I think that was a theme I heard from the earlier session too. This is not something you turn on and it gives you all the answers. You must have a human sort of guiding and reviewing and engaged, both from a change management perspective, helping people sort of engage with the platform, but also from a making sure that the strategy makes sense and you're focused on the right things. So, yeah. I don't know if I hand off to Andrew or Petra here.
Yeah, hand off to me. Thank you, Mary.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure.
Well, schönen guten Abend aus Vancouver, Canada. My name is Petra Kurita, and I head up partnerships here at SkyHive. having come from leading a transformation at one of Canada's banks and quickly realizing that technology wasn't the issue, but talent was, and then having spent some time in consulting. And as a startup, our mission really is quite bold, and that is, next slide, to enable 7 billion people in the world with a skill passport to address unemployment and underemployment with the goal of economic security for all. And SkyHive is really one of the most advanced reskilling platforms powered by our underlying technology of quantum labor analysis. So you can think of SkyHive almost as the Google of the world labor market, and capturing the shifts and changes in the supply and demand of jobs and skills. And so next, just a little bit about us. We're a social for-profit company serving the global 2000s as well as governments on all continents. And we're thrilled to have investors such as Deutsche Bank, Workday, and Accenture, and then humbled last year by the recognition from Gartner, the World Economic Forum, and Forbes. And certainly underpinning everything we do is the use of responsible AI, of course, in this really important space of talent and skills, and we'll get a little bit more into that. So to set the stage, as you're all aware, whether it's a pandemic, technology disruptors in the FinTech space, changing consumer expectations, it's that pace and degree of change that is accelerated well beyond how organizations can adjust their workforce to the needs of whatever the business imperative is. And then on the flip side, companies are falling short in understanding the true DNA of their workforce due to the classic application of constructs such as job architectures, competing models, and that's really impacting the ability to pivot the workforce. So after 20 years of producing data and organizing data, the world's now focused on and has access to technology that's cognifying all facets of information. And cognification is applying machine learning to make something smarter. And that's really at the heart of what we do here at SkyHive, the cognification and democratization of the world labor economy. And so we've achieved that by inventing breakthrough technology called quantum labor analytics, which is the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning to analyze a workforce at its most granular level. And that's at the skill level. And this creates the first fluid skill ontology. Next. And so why is quantum labor analysis really unique in this space? We process about 18 to 20 terabytes of data on across 150 countries that feeds the largest knowledge graph with about 6.2 billion nodes that serves as the source for data, jobs, skills, and training. And that data really comes from a number of sources, whether those are job boards and aggregators, professional networks, government agencies. In terms of understanding the future and emerging skills, we're looking at patents that are pending, academic studies, thought leadership, and all of this is coming into, again, the ability for us to look at the supply and the demand, the skills that are emerging, the skills that are contracting, and the skills that are staying constant, which really informs that real-time fluid skill ontology that is helping organizations, governments, not-for-profits really shift the workforce to where they need it. So again, almost acting as that Google of the world labor market, where you could Google what's the highest supply of data scientists, what skills and experience should inform where I locate my center of excellence. Which competitor am I losing my DevOps employees to, and what salaries and bonuses? So really the magnitude of this knowledge graph is what powers the applications that sit on top of quantum labor analysis. Next slide. So just to summarize here in terms of what differentiates SkyHive is one, this real-time view of the labor market, if you will, almost like the stock market ticker tape, helping you understand those skills and where they're coming from. quantum labor analysis, which we've talked about, taking that information down to its most granular level, and that's the skill level, to be able to move and see the DNA of your workforce and move it to the right place at the right time. And then ultimately, all organizations have made incredible investments, and so into their tech architecture internally in their ecosystem. And so we're extensible by design, whether that's integrating with Workday or SuccessFactors or any of the other talent solutions. And then, quite understandably, we need to normalize the data, our data, and the labor market view with what is within the organization itself. And then finally, and most importantly, we're leaders working with the OECD and others around the ethical use of AI that's defensible, explainable, and accountable ultimately to the organization, to regulators, and to individuals. Next slide. And so how really does this come to life in an organization? It really acts as the decoder ring to understand your workforce. And so for the first time, you can see the DNA of your workforce at the skill level. So our clients are answering 4 simple questions. What are the skills we have? What are the skills we need in the future? Because I'm getting those from the labor market. What are the gaps? Because I'm able to do that gap assessment, understand the proximity and adjacency of roles and skills, and see that in real time. And then ultimately, how do we close those skill gaps, and what actions do we take? So along with our partners like Accenture, Skyhive is helping to inform how you build, buy, borrow, or bought BOT, your talent strategy, and ultimately how you bring that strategy into action in moving talent to where it's needed most. So again, some of the use cases and the results that clients are working with us on are really around creating greater internal mobility, because now employees can see the kinds of skills they have at a much more granular level and be able to take new opportunities within an organization that they never thought. From an employer perspective, the ability to retain talent because they're able to get that true transparency, create those curated learning paths that are targeted on the skill gaps, and ultimately higher employee engagement as there's greater ownership on the individual of their skill profile or that skill passport of new opportunities. So excited in the question and answer, certainly to speak to more use cases, but whether it's organizations moving through a large cloud transformation in the financial services sector, to others that are looking in, let's say, the mining industry to really shift that talent around globally in a scarce environment of skills, really the cadre of use cases. So with that, I think I'm handing over here to Andrew.
Great, thanks Petra. So we've heard already from Mary Kate about some of the key themes we're seeing in the market when it comes to talent and skills, plus from Petra about more about Skyhive. Let me take you through one practical example about how we work together on one of our clients in financial services. So we worked recently with one bank in the UK that really needed to be able to demonstrate to regulators that colleagues had the right skill levels in key skills to do with financial crime and fighting that, and so that the regulator could be clear that colleagues had the right skills to tackle that. And that was why we worked alongside Skyhive and really used data to make sure that we could provide that evidence to the regulator. So prior to starting, there wasn't really that evidence of where the skills gaps were seen in an organization. And so it meant that training plans to address skill gaps didn't have that data-driven and evidence-based element. And that was really the focus of what we wanted to do. So our approach was quite simple. We worked collaboratively with Skyhive to do a 5-phased implementation plan that had the colleague at the center. So we really focused on launching a skills assessment using SkyHive, like Petra alluded to earlier, to around 2,500 colleagues in the organisation. And the colleagues were able to assess their proficiency levels in a range of different topics. Line managers were also able to ratify those and provide their validation so that we could identify and use SkyHive's artificial intelligence capabilities to be able to identify where are we seeing our top skill strengths and where are our top skill gaps. And that allowed us to identify what recommendations do we have for what training can be done next year to address those gaps. So it's really about providing to the regulator and to colleagues a really data-driven, evidence-based view of where training should be prioritised for the year ahead. And the real focus is by using SkyHive in this scenario, not only have we got an example of what this looks like, as a one-off, but we do have the opportunity to do this further, given there's a multi-year license. So the idea is we have a scalable model that will allow us to do this again and again and identify recurring patterns or changes that have seen, using that data to help inform, decision-making and strategy across the learning side. In terms of what the outcomes are, we did see that by really supporting colleagues with lots of change management, so we did regular communications, we did demos for colleagues of how to use the SkyHive tool. It's very intuitive, but we just wanted to make sure that colleagues had an opportunity to go through it step by step with us, and we were there to address any questions. So we saw more than 60% of colleagues adopting the SkyHive tool, putting it in to get their results, as well as a high proportion of line managers. That allowed us to really get concrete skill gaps at the team level and at the role level. That helped us really provide that evidence-based view of where skill gaps were. And that allowed us to provide a summary view of 6 core recommendations that we can feed into next year. So to kind of just put the focus back on the human, like Mary Kate was alluding to earlier, what this looked like for the colleagues, it was a really simple journey. So we really proactively worked ahead of time with business leads to make sure that people knew this was coming. It wasn't an unexpected request. And then on the day itself that SkyHive launched, we did a phased rollout to different teams rather than a big bang to make sure everyone was able to address it in a really targeted way. We did launch communications, we provided a live demo, and colleagues went directly into the tool to access their profile and rate themselves. And then at that point, that was them done. Probably a 15-minute job for them at most. Then the line managers then went in after that. They had the chance to validate the results again with a live demo to help them walk through. And then at the end of that, that's when we were able to get the results using SkyHive's AI. And then from that, use that to populate a report that provided our results and then recommendations. So that's just one example in a little bit more depth about how we were able to partner together to provide that insight for one of our clients there. Natalie, I think I'm handing back to you for the Q&A component now, if I'm right.
Yes, perfect. What a handover, Andrew. I think you should be the moderator here next time, huh? So I hope that all of you got a bit inspired. When I heard about this case for the first time, and then I was asking myself, okay, what about the learnings and the challenges? How open? We need to bring back my colleagues. We don't see them anymore. Exactly. How open are organizations really to applying data in the HR and skills area? Mary Kate or Petra, you work with a lot of them.
Yeah, I would say very open at this point. I would say a majority of the organizations that I'm working with are already doing something in this space. I think the evolution is either, I guess the maturity is either sort of they are doing something in a small scale. One function is already, sort of leveraging AI, or they have built an entire organization really focused around sort of analytics, AI and analytics as it relates to both workforce planning, skills assessments, and also sort of future state planning, if you will, kind of beyond workforce planning. So that'd be my perspective. Petra, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd say many organizations, more than ever before, I would say, are just realizing their business as at a tipping point if they don't fundamentally understand the DNA of their workforce. And with whether it's the Great Resignation, whether it's the war for talent, they need to look internally and see what they have to be able to create those opportunities for employees within. as well as know where to spend scarce talent dollars in the external market. And so the time is now for this kind of technology. And again, it's an art and a science, as we've said so many times. We bring the science and the technology, but really, whether it's the executives, whether it's the business leaders or employees, and then HR, all 4 layers, really having visibility and transparency to the same data, but then more than ever to move quickly to make those decisions to win in whatever industry they're in, whether that's the race to green our planet, whether that's a change and shift in the business model because of what we've just come through in the pandemic, and the economic situation that is on our doorstep now. So talent really is never been before been really at the heart of what some of the most acute business challenges are for our leaders.
And then something actually from you, from the audience, or you're online. Where do you get the data from? That's what everyone is wondering. Complexity to get data, and specifically this case, where to get the data from?
So we collect data from over 150 countries. So you can imagine just the enormity of collecting that data. Then specifically the type of data we're collecting is anything from professional networks, job boards, aggregators, government agencies of any and all kind, though recognizing those are often lagging indicators in terms of the data. Thought leadership coming out of universities or think tanks, patents. Imagine scanning crawlers and bots, scanning all of the patents that are pending. We were one of the first to start seeing this notion of metaverse come up in the world labor market. So, and then it's just the amount of data, right, that we're taking in, the 15 to 20 terabytes of data. We're processing that through a proprietary, well, certainly through algorithms, and then through a proprietary neural network that is creating the relationships and clustering the types of data and information that we're seeing in the labor market.
And then what about when collaborating with large corporates, not only in financial services, but in general? What are some of the challenges that you are facing? Because why am I asking this? I've been asking this already 3-4 times today, but when I asked Petra this, she gave me a few answers I didn't hear yet before. Sorry, Petra.
Now I may not remember what I said. So the first is that organizations don't have the data on their workforce. So what's in their HRIS is limited. Though, again, the power of Skyhive is the ability to extract the skills from very little data, actually, that an employee might have or an organization might have, although it can start with something as simple as your CV, resume, or your LinkedIn profile that you would upload. And certainly with the World Economic Forum, we found people self-reported about 6 skills. When AI Skyhive is applied, 34 skills emerge. So you can imagine, therefore, the exponential opportunity when you understand skills that you don't self-report in terms of the opportunities. So that's number one, is the kind of data that we're getting from workforces or from companies. Then the second challenge would really be for employees to think differently and to own their skill passport and their ability to chart internally the learning path or the career path, to close the skill gap, to see new opportunity within the organization, or quite frankly outside the organization, if that's a better choice. And so, we might 5 years down the road, employers, the whole equation may shift, where it's not employers looking for talent in the market, but rather the other way around, that the employee with their skill passport is going to employers, and the whole the way that we recruit for talent today is different. But you can always give me a teaser, Natalie, if there were others that we had talked about.
No, exactly these. And then you mentioned ontology, skills ontology, that it's not yet fully understood within the company, which I found interesting. Maybe you can share a bit.
Yeah, great point and reminder. Thank you for that. this is a fundamental paradigm shift for organizations to no longer have static Excel-based skill definitions, skill architectures or job architectures, but really that now there is a fluid, real-time, dynamic skill ontology so that it is changing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And you're starting to see the shifts of which skills are emerging in the marketplace in a certain geography. Therefore, I need to get ahead of that or know that my competitors might be hiring that. These are the skills I need to continue to invest in because the labor market is signaling that those continues to stay constant. And then on the other side, on the platform, you can see which skills are declining. And again, those change on a regular basis. And so for organizations, that fundamental paradigm shift of something that's static moving to something that's fluid and dynamic is what is really the game changer.
And then maybe another question still to Andrew and Mary Kay to wrap up. Why would organizations go with a third party like Skyhive? Or why would they not just kickstart these projects internally? I would be interested in that.
Yeah, I think because they don't have the technology. So I think part of it is, you know, to develop this sort of like AI takes a bit of time, to say the least. And in some organizations, you know that would be sort of too much of an investment, is what I would say, Natalie. So I know even for organizations like Accenture, our size, right, running multiple algorithms in this space, right, is a big investment. And at the same time, we feel like it's really important to spend the time and the money and the sort of brain power around it. But I think the key is just really having someone else who's sort of looking at those algorithms, being more agnostic about it, I think is really important. And just from a speed perspective, it would take a long time to develop the technology or anything like what Skyhive or others in this space have created. So yeah, that would be my thoughts. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew. Yeah,
Mary Kate, I would agree, and I think that I'm sure there are models that may work with a much smaller audience that are offline, but really the technology that something like Skyhive provides really allows you to scale up for a larger audience, a larger number of skills, different business areas, different geographies. So for organizations like the ones that we work with that have complex size and scale, being able to use something like Skyhive to do one assessment, more than one assessment, just is a lot more, like Mary Kate says, just gives the speed, the efficiencies that other providers maybe wouldn't have.
Perfect. Well, thanks to the three of you. I looked at my phone, like I said, not TikTok, but all the questions. There's many. So really this case was triggering a lot of thoughts. I would suggest we can connect anyone that is interested to brainstorm a bit more about this case and ask the questions personally. So thanks to the three of you for your time. Also, it's quite early on your side, not like the afternoon here. So thanks a lot, and talk soon, maybe in another context. Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks very much.
Good. And now we've reached the final part, but not a short part, because we have a lot of different speakers coming up now. So what actually I would like you to answer here is go on to Slido, please. Once more, getting everyone active so that we are fully concentrated on the next case. Because the question is, have you ever heard of data mesh? Yes, no, not sure. Ooh, someone is very motivated. Yes, 75%. Oh no, it's going down, 57. I was already getting too excited. But 50% are yes. No is becoming smaller and smaller, but nevertheless, it is still there. I mean, above 40%. So that's what this whole session will be about. And first, let me ask, he will be coming on my side here, Philipp. Perfect. Thank you, Philipp. Philipp Eigner is with us at Accenture. And for those of you who don't know data mesh, those 40+%, but also for those that do know data mesh, he will be explaining a bit what we think about this concept, what he has also seen. He has worked with many different organizations in different data setups and has really looked into data governance and data mesh. So Philipp, the floor is fully yours. And then later, so please stay tuned, everyone that is live with us, because there will be a panel afterwards where we'll be digging in more. So Philipp, floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome. Philipp Eigner. I'm 5 years with Accenture now and have over 12 years of professional experience mangling with large data landscapes. And I'm hopefully can give you the 40% that we heard that never heard of data mesh, give you a quick glimpse of actually what data mesh means. So basically where we are coming from. Yeah, when we are talking about data landscapes, we came from old data warehouses, data lakes. These are landscapes that basically have one common data pipeline. So from ingest to curation to actually consumption, everything is in one pipeline. Yeah, and mostly this is IT driven. Yeah, so the IT is the owner of the pipeline, does the data management and all of these things. And this is therefore the actual bottleneck in the middle. Yeah, so a lot of the time within these models, we are actually not utilizing the actual knowledge of the SMEs, of the data producers in the beginning. So the people who are actually, for example, using the CRM system or doing with the claims management and so on. Yeah, and very little to this is going then to the actual outcome. Yeah. And we have now the game changer to this. So like we have, for example, a few years back introduced the microservice pattern within the normal software development, and the actually equivalent of the microservice pattern to the data landscape is the data mesh approach. Yeah. So to come actually a little bit more. So one thing, and if this is the only thing that you may take from this talk, is very important. Data mesh is not the pure technical concept. Yeah, it's a so-called socio-technical concept. So it both considers the technology and the actual organization change that needs to happen in order that it will work. Yeah. So if you are talking about, for example, a data lake or a data warehouse, then you can buy a specific product that actually delivers you this. A data mesh is not one set of products; it's a common setting of different products. Yeah, and if we are talking about it, core principle clearly is data, but then the next big thing is actually that we are talking about distributed domain-driven architecture. So meaning small teams that have highly knowledge about their specific data domain, yeah, are working together. So also data engineers, people from the business, people that might create the visualization, maybe some data scientists on the one hand side, they are working together in these small teams and actually producing this data product. And this is also another one thing, the product thinking. So I actually create a data product, yeah. So something that has a life cycle, something that has a backlog, yeah, something that has actually some release cycles, and also it has some kind of monetization. So this doesn't mean that you have to sell it to anybody, but it has to bring value to the company, yeah. And you also should measure it, yeah. And of course, so maybe for somebody from the IT department especially, what brings what is the actual benefit for the IT is that they can provide a centralized platform that provides these self-service capabilities. So actually ensures these little teams that are working on the data products to work on this stuff, having a self-service experience, and therefore being able to deliver things faster and without any additional service costs. So when actually, so data mesh was invented by Zhamak Degami, in 2019. So it's a relatively young topic. She even released the first real book on data mesh this year. So you can buy it, I think, since end of May, or so at least on the German markets. And she first formulated those 4 principles. And basically, if we're going further, what brings us these 4 principles? So what offer they value-wise? Value-wise, we have this reduced operational costs. Why we have reduced operational costs? We're working in smaller teams. Everybody experienced this maybe. If for all of a sudden you have had these big projects, maybe on the data warehousing side, where you had always this gyro ping pong and so on, and finally sitting teams together in one single room, and all of a sudden within days you solve problems that before have been stretched over months. Data management, same again. Team is getting together, SMEs are there, so people are knowledgeable about the data, can quite quickly and better resolve the issues. Good. What we said also with increasing the time to market. Again, small teams, they have a self-service capabilities on the platform, so which then allows them to do things more quickly, more agile, in a better environment. Good. And of course, the product thinking. So how I can improve my data product and so on. So this is actually a data mesh on a very high level, and it's a very confusing graphic for most people, but it's actually quite easy. We have here our data products. If we're talking about a data product, then this is something that sits in a data domain. For example, a data domain can be source derived. So saying, okay, I have a CRM system, and then I have there my campaign data as a data product. For example, and this campaign data can then somebody with a data science background utilize in another data product, saying, okay, how successful was my campaign? How successful I'm actually by running certain channels, for example. This is the idea and concept, having these small packaged things that basically but have also, again, all of the steps that you usually would have in this world before. So for example, you see here, again, we are having source data. We are again going to an ingestion process. We are again doing a curation of the data model. We are again then basically providing this API access or database access to somebody else who then uses the data. And we also have to collect metadata. But within our model, we have these little teams that are all working on different kind of data products, but they have to follow these things in a way that the framework basically provided by IT is actually dictating this. So they have to use a certain data catalog. They have to use a certain data tagging and so on. So by governing this from a self-service perspective, it really works out that these things are interacting with each other. And that's basically the benefit of it. So coming already to our final slide. So you might ask, is this already something that is highly in use? We have to say we have currently about 8+ clients where we implement some parts of the data mesh principles. And what we would call data mesh implementations. So this is in the region in ASGR. And currently, even ThoughtWorks, the guys who invented this, Zhamak Degami, a few slides back, they say they are still in a somewhat trial period. So I checked this state today. It's still in the trial period. But it's, of course, it's 3 years after the concept, but it's definitely the way forward because it's, as I said, the microservice pattern for data. And we all know the microservice pattern is now settled totally in IT, for example. And just by having a look on Medium, we have now tripled the times of articles already about data mesh than 1 year before. Yeah, and we have companies like Google with Dataplex or Lake Formation with AWS taking on that. So that shows you already, okay, this is something that's probably here to stay. And yeah, the big ones are utilizing it already. And now I think we have here a few people that already went through that fire of implementing a data mesh. And I therefore hand over to Lucas, and I think we can start the panel discussion.
So thanks a lot, Philip, for the nice introduction, and also a warm welcome from my side. And we'll have now, as a last agenda point, the panel of today. So therefore, I would like that the participants of the panel please come to the front, and we'll organize the seats as well. Okay, thanks a lot. And the microphone. So as far as I've understood from Philip, it sounds like the data Emerson, so really something which every company should have. So my first question would be, from your perspective, what would be really the benefits when you think about data mesh, and should every company have it at least? And Diana, if you would like to start on one hand to introduce yourself, and then to give a quick insight from your perspective.
Sure. Hello to everyone. My name is Diana Jankovic-Jasic. I'm coming from Erste Bank. I'm responsible for the BAC Austria. So if your question is whether we should, and every company should have really a data mesh, I would say for the specific use case, for sure, yes. We all here operate in a highly regulated environment, you know, and this of course brings a lot of obstacles in the day-to-day business. But when it comes to the specific use cases which are related to our customers, which are related to the data products, which are related to the further improvement, and especially which are related to the real-time data, then I would say that data mesh as such is unavoidable. And this brings multiple benefits in these regards, but it's also unfortunately not the unique solution. Somebody mentioned, I think Philip in his presentation, like monolithic beasts as the current data warehouse. You know, on one hand, I would agree with that one. You know, it's not easy to build a data warehouse. On the other hand, it's also a question, how does this work currently in the current environment in which we are working with so many regulations, as said.
Thanks a lot. So Felix, maybe your point of view on that. So it should work already.
Okay, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Felix Klemm. I'm a managing director at Accenture, a part of the leadership of data and applied intelligence. And actually, in my individual role, I'm coaching clients with data mesh since a few years now. And actually, if you ask me about benefits of data mesh and should everybody have a data mesh, we will see actually, but actually what we see in the market is really that data mesh is perceived as a game changer. Yeah, we have been talking since many years now about data-led transformation, meaning how to become truly digital. And actually, so a few years ago, we did a survey with our clients asking them, what do you think, how far, how mature you are on your way to data-led transformation? And we found out that many struggle with the fundamentals, yeah, with data integration, with data governance. So the very basic fundamentals. Yeah? And data mesh is now saying, actually, I mean, you don't need to achieve this big monolith, this big standardized, harmonized data landscape. Yeah, it's okay where you are. Yeah, you can have data lakes, you can have data warehouses. Yeah, so stay where you are. We accept a certain distribution in your data landscape. Start where you are. Start small. You have now an iterative approach on how to achieve more agility, more technical capabilities like real-time data, for example. Yeah, you can add that to your existing portfolio and really scale that up, really starting small with enabling all the cool data assets you have in your company, expose them and have some kind of democratization that everybody can use the data. And it's really, if you do it right, it will be holistic and really comfortable for your consumers.
Thanks a lot. So maybe Alexander, next question to you. What actually challenges or obstacles are you seeing when you think about data mesh implementation into an organization? What are the standard lessons learned in a certain sense that you can transfer to the audience?
Alexander Petzmann, Monica Insurance Group. So in the group data management, we have 18 countries, 20,000 employees to be covered, 50 million customers, a lot of data, 100 years in the field. And you can tell a lot of technologies out there. As Felix described, we have to start where we are. So, and this is the best obstacle. We have to start where we are. We cannot start greenfield. We have legacy. We have a lot of legacy. And if you try to harmonize things, standardize things, that's a good approach. That's important if you are putting things together. But even in the same time, there are emerging new things, new technologies, new hype topics. And if everything is under control, or you think you have everything under control, then you're buying another company like we did with AXA, for example. So you have, again, the whole integration stuff and so on. So is it possible to get into this basic idea of a single platform solution? No, that's a simple answer. So, and this is the starting point. But on the other hand, we were sold in the last years, let's tell it the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that's the next solution. You have to take this solution and integrate everything into there, and then it will work out. Was it the data warehouses? Was it the enterprise data model? Was it the data lakes? Was it whatever, you name it? So, and what I think personally is the data mesh is the first very realistic approach here to say, no, the world is distributed. It's not all the same. You cannot harmonize everything. But what you can do, and thanks, Philip, you brought it perfectly to us, you can focus on domains, on user domains. And that's the second obstacle. It's the people. We will not bring everybody to the same table. But we can bring certain persons with similar problems and similar thinkings, so usage patterns, for example, to different tables. These are the domains. And the third obstacle is here. How can you make people using the things? You have two things or two kind of parties which are very crucial in a data mesh. You have the data consumers and the producers. So at Unica, we put another analogy like an app store. And we called it not a data catalog, we called it the data product store. So we need to bring data products into the store, and we need data consumers to be interested to find their data, what they need for their daily work in this data product store. And we have a very similar problem. How can we find people? How can we attract people to go there, to bring their data products there? And how can we attract people to try to find the data they need there and not to ask, I don't know, in the cafeteria or so. Go there, search it. How was the Google store, the Apple App Store, and so on? Where does success come from? It comes from the people. If we manage to be attractive to the people, to bring in their data products and to search for data in there, then we will be successful. That's our main finding here. And if the vendors come up with suitable solutions, we will be happy, because currently we did not find one. We are at the second RFP now for data cataloging with the same questions like 2 years ago. But to be honest, I'm not so hopeful that we will find the perfect solution this time.
Okay, so I know a good consulting company who can for sure guide you through the path. But maybe coming to Georg, I've understood so far, if you think about people, process, or technology, it's more related to the people compared to technology. So would you agree on that?
Yes. Hello, my name is Georg, head of enterprise data analytics platform at RBI. And yes, for sure, it is a people topic. Yeah. So I would say a lesson learned that we had so far in our journey is the involvement of, I would say, both sides. You need IT, you need and also the business people. You need to make sure that everybody has the right skills. Very funny. We did a skills assessment the last week. And guess what? The I would say biggest gap was that our colleagues said that they have. Yeah? The IT guys said the biggest gap besides I don't know, reinforcement learning or whatever. The biggest gap was knowledge about a business. Yeah, knowledge about the content of the data. Yeah? What is it aiming for? Why do we have it? Yeah? And if we ask on the other side on the business colleagues, here always the topic comes up with having the right skills. Yeah, knowing SQL, knowing being data literate enough, understanding also here from a technical point of view what asset we have in the data. And here I think data mesh is an extremely good enabler because it says start small, start in a cross-functional team, try to or define the first data products, make sure that you have it properly documented, make sure that it's usable, make sure that you have a consumer for your data product. And I must say here really data mesh is a good way. It's a good start, and a good enabler here to create this common data literacy and also to get the value out of the data. Because in most of the cases, also like with us, also like with other companies, people don't get this value out there.
So, Diana, I mean, we already talked about data mesh upfront today, and I've understood it's not like that we're having some kind of new technology, new kind of governance, and then we're just applying it at the corresponding organization, but we have to think about how to really drive the way forward. So if you can give us maybe some insights how your journey started and where it is currently.
Well, I would come back to this, what Alex just say, first thing is to really move the people from cafeteria thinking, and getting the information about the data from cafeteria to data catalog, this is, but in general, when speaking about the data mesh as such and moving towards this journey, I would say, it's 2022. And I think that a lot of organization, maybe even coming back to the presentation previous, are not aware of the skills which they have of the people within the organization. I would just give you a plain example, in our division of around 50 people, where I'm working as well, I would say that 49 do not have SQL skills. I mean, it's not like that all over the organization, but it is a lot, because people really went up a lot with their skills. Only I would say that the assistant maybe doesn't have the SQL skills. All the rest do. And but the question in terms of further going towards the data mesh and using data mesh for certain purposes also implies a lot of working on the data culture. A lot of working on this. This is not important only for data mesh. This is important for also for these big monolithical beasts, in term called the data warehouses. However you look at this point of view, I would say that the skills and the support from the colleagues from HR in this regard, would help a lot. Doesn't matter data mesh or monolithical data warehouse. Still, this is the key.
Thanks a lot. So Alex, let's assume a new organization is knocking on your door. So what would be your recommendation about data mesh, the first steps, how they should tackle it?
Starting towards the data mesh is starting where you are, starting very small, like Felix said. How can you start to get the things going? You have simply to pick out the ones who want to start with you, because it is about people. So you have to select maybe among some use cases, several use cases, let's call them free use cases, where you think those people are interested, they are inspired, they have some kind of spirit on that, and they want to try something new. And those are the ones who can kind of offer data. And if you're lucky, you find 3 others which need their data. And that's basically the problem. You start not with 300 data products and with 20,000 people requiring data. You need some small, and start small, and then telling the story, improving, telling the story, going this lighthouse approach. That's basically important, because then it starts to be interesting. Others start, okay, how did you do that? Okay, how did you reuse the data? Oh, you're just using an API call and you can access the data. No, it did not take you 6 months. You got the data within 6 days, and it can be even faster. Telling these stories, that's important here. Again, it's about people, and people, we tend to say you have few people in the organization who want to try out new things. You have only few people who never want to try out new things. And the big in the middle, they make the difference, and you can only attract them with the stories. Create stories. That's how to get started.
Sounds great, yeah. So Felix, when we're thinking about the market, we've understood from Philip that the concept was created 2019, so 3 years back, not quite long. So how would you see the current DACH market, where it is currently? Are we in a starting position, or are we already on the journey? If you can comment on that.
Yeah, we have different levels of maturity there. Yeah, we see that really it's a hot topic in the market. Many clients approaching us, yeah, so we don't need to go and tell about data mesh. People ask us how to really do it, yeah. And so we have really big companies asking for help in that, and we have different maturity levels. We have many companies who are in the first steps, defining the first use cases, doing the decomposition of data products and all that, yeah. But also, especially in certain industries like life science, we already see bigger installations in production, yeah. But there's no company which has more than 20 or 30 data products really live. So it's really in an early stage. Yeah, I'm just saying, I mean, this is really true what Philip said. Yeah, so even on the inventors page on the tech radar of ThoughtWorks, data mesh is marked as trial. Yeah, you can try it out, you should try it, but don't expect that much support from vendors, for example. Yeah, we talked about data catalog. My colleague Wolfgang was visiting one of the big catalog vendors and telling them how to use their product for registering data products, yeah, because they didn't know actually. So these are the solutions we currently find in practice. And actually, if you wait a few years, there will be kind of a competition between the vendors who has the best approach to tackle it. Yeah, we see companies like Databricks or Snowflake adjusting their products to fit with this idea of data mesh, and a lot of these questions will be solved then, and it will be a lot easier to get into this. But it doesn't mean to wait years, yeah, because then the competitive advantage will be gone. Yeah, so take the chance to start early, I would say.
Thanks a lot. So Georg, when you hear all that, I have the impression that Austria is one step ahead. So we have here many people already knowing data mesh concept and are already tried it or applying it. So how would you see that? Is this because of the of Austria in general, the innovation part, or just luck? What is your feeling?
Good question. Yeah. I would say data mesh, because we have a lot of international companies, the headquarters here, and I think we all experienced a lot with our monolithical data warehouses, and had here, I would say, a lot of pain. And I think, yeah, having here this scene, and having here this knowledge and the past, and also having here, I would say, quite good skills on the market. We're a good starting point with data mesh. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. So Alex, when we are 2 or 3 years ahead, so where would you see your organization and also the market? Are we on the same stage? Are we 1 foot ahead, or where are we actually?
I think in terms of data mesh, we are a little bit ahead. I was in London at the big summit 2 weeks ago or something. And what I was recognizing there is that however you call it, data fabric, data mesh, however you want to name it, this approach started to emerge. And it is a solution for companies, for companies like we have the situation here in Austria, especially, but also for a lot of other companies with that legacy topic. And they have the chance to do one step over it, over the current situation. So we perceive ourselves to be one step behind, or we perceived ourselves as being one step behind, but that's simply not true. We have the chance now to overcome that, like we had with the fixed lines phones, and then the mobile phones came, and in some countries the fixed lines the infrastructure was a disaster, and they totally stepped over it and overcome it with this mobile phone infrastructure. And I have the same feeling for us here in Austria. It's a big chance for us simply to do not the same failures like others did in this field, like in the recent years, especially in the last, let's say, 3, 4, 5 years. And step over that, and using this investment into this small and democratic starting process, just by giving the platform. And we will have the same problem here. If you consider Apple, there was nobody giving them a platform for an app store. They had to develop it for themselves. Luckily, there are kind of platforms today which we can use to make something like a data product store. And that's what we're doing. But it would have been easier if we could have bought one. And that's where we will be in 3 years, I think. Then we will throw away what we try to make now instead of buy it and can buy one, because we are an insurance company and not a development company for data product stores.
So, Diana, question to you. In 3 years, will Erste Bank have also an app store related to data?
I would say yes. And for sure, yes. But, before thinking about, how we would handle this, I would still tackle, some of the topics related to it. And first, I remember what Georg was saying during his presentation. Artificial intelligence is not a magic bullet. And also data mesh is not a magic bullet. Before we start going into this direction, before we really go into this direction, we have to think thoroughly about what are exactly the cases where we would apply. And we have to think about the governance, because definitely it is possible to use data mesh for many use cases, for many topics, but it is still the question of potentially creating new silos. Is this going, if the governance is not proper, is this maybe going to create some new silos within the given domains? How would this work? How would this work from the point of view of escalations? How would this work from the point of view of the data duplicities between the data domains? So there are multiple questions which are open in this regard, but still for a lot of topics which are related really to the customer-centric view, to the product view, I would say that data mesh is not something which can be avoided and shouldn't be avoided in the end.
Thanks a lot. So the title of the panel is The Answer to Scaled Actionable Insights. And I would like to do a quick round. So Felix, if you would start, so maybe 1 or 2 sentences. Is this a yes or no regarding to the question?
Yeah, it depends. Can I say more than one? Okay. I mean, actually, it highly depends how this product thinking is established in your organization. Yeah, and it's not enough to build the mesh and the cool infrastructure and the data catalog and then it's running. Yeah, you need to work on the use cases which really differentiate and make a change in the market in your organization. And this is an ongoing journey. It's not something, mesh is just the foundation. You need to work on this product thinking. Then yes, if you establish that, yes, definitely.
So maybe Alex, your point of view?
Mesh is a key concept, but it's dead without the people. So you need constantly get the interest of the people, the attraction to the people from both sides, from the data producers and the consumers. And yes, the platform, the technology you need is simply the technology you need to provide them a platform where to work. But it's about the people. You have to attract the people, then it will scale.
Mm-hmm. Diana, is it a silver bullet or?
No, absolutely not. As I said, it's not a silver bullet. It's not the magic solution for all the problems and everything what we have, but definitely also a step forward. So if you ask me, yes, maybe, but for very carefully thought issues where you would apply. That's it. This would be my answer.
Georg?
I would say yes. Yeah, having worked a lot of time in traditional data warehouse environments. Yeah, so I would say definitely enough is enough. Yeah, and yes, and I think it's important that this topic overcomes this first hype. And if it, I would say, overcomes this first hype, will depend on if it can be, I would say, properly monetized, if there's a proper business case behind, if you have still after 2-3 years the people who support it, if there's still a, I would say, pulling effect. And this also comes with, I would say, the people, and also it comes with the platforms and technology behind them.
So maybe coming to the QA session, and I'm having it the several different questions. So maybe it's starting with the first one. Is there still a data warehouse or lake behind the data mesh? If yes, why isn't it still cumbersome? If no, what if I need to connect data from different domains? So any volunteer who want to answer that question?
Both. There will be not one, there will be several data warehouses and several data lakes and multi-cloud usage and everything which is upcoming in the next years. And that's the basic problem here. Data mesh can help to overcome this big zoo of technologies and of different approaches and different silos. But the problem is not to create new ones. So it is also the problem of connecting data products. If you think of one data product, taking data from another data product, taking data from another data product, taking data from another data product, then you have the typical lineage problem, or simply I call it data flow. And if your data mesh is automatically using this API approach, that you gather the information from your data products, the metadata, let's say all over and over again, then you can automatically also generate which data product uses data from which data product. And then you will see the mesh. That's the visual approach, will be maybe a small one in the beginning and later a very, very big data mesh. And yeah, it's not to say we can stop all data warehouse topics because of reconciliation. For example, there are domains where you really need harmonized data models and data warehouses, especially in risk, in compliance topics, in finance topics. You need them because it's not very easy to make the reconciliation among different data products. But there are a lot of advantages in the data products where you have multiple data warehouses, multiple lakes, multiple sources. So both come together then.
So next question is, how much does it take for a bank to go for data mesh? Georg, if you want to take it.
Yeah, how much? In I would effort, yeah, whatever. I would say there are three main components. Yeah, it's the one hand that the first component is that you have the proper technical setup in place, meaning proper tooling, proper platform. A proper setup. It's also like you mentioned it before. We are a bank. We are not self-developing now a data catalog. We are not self-developing an app store for data. It is unrealistic. So it's important for us to choose here the right platform. So to have here the, I would say, right underlying basis. Yeah. The second topic is people and skills, and this is also tough investment, I must say. For example, we are running a data science academy to skill up RBI here on a large level. Also, we say data without analytics is nothing. So you need to combine both, otherwise you will not get the value out of it. And also this, I would say, principle needs to be taught and literated through the group. And the third big topic is then also finding the right business case and the value behind the data and the data products. Yeah? Because if it can't be properly monetized, yeah, then this whole investment, yeah, you don't get the right return. So I would say these three components are critical success factors, and it takes it that we can make it. Yeah.
So Felix, maybe one question to you. So how close are you working with Microsoft Azure product services? And maybe to make it more broader, when you think about products or vendors overall, so what is your point of view? What would you guide an organization? What is the way forward with respect to technology?
I mean, as said, so the mesh idea is not a technology-driven idea, but I would say if you really want to achieve results fast, you need to go for cloud. Yeah, I mean, actually, I have some clients trying to do it on-prem, but actually, it's double the effort and less outcome. And then, I mean, there's too much competition to traditional concepts. Then, yeah, and the benefits might not be that big. Yeah, so it's natural to talk with the cloud providers. And actually, there are really, really interesting concepts developed, yeah, especially in terms of when it comes to data catalog and data marketplace, and also the access concepts. Yeah, so many cloud providers are working on really interesting services, making that much easier. You need to imagine that each and every data product has its own roles and dependencies and access constraints, yeah, and it's much easier to have a cloud-based scripted policy around that than to use some kind of a cataloging tool, which is super heavy. Yeah? So this is where we are in close connection also to work to arrange or to compose these data mesh architectures out of services. Yeah, and I mean actually you will see a different world next year, I would say. Yeah.
Thanks. So let's having another question maybe from the audience. Is there someone who wants to ask our experts something with respect to data mesh? Or is everything clear? It's always funny. Okay, if not, then let's close the session. So thanks a lot for being here today, and I wish you still a nice day.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot to the whole panel, like Lucas said. And so we've made it to the end, but not yet fully, because there's always two ways. Either I talk to you, but you've heard me so much already, or I listen to you. And that's what we want to do. So please take out your Slido. And then the question is, one word that you've remembered today. So I would like you to pull into Slido the one word that remains from all of these 2.5 hours, from the different sessions. What will you take with you from today? Mesh. Okay, someone remembers. Pathology. AI is not a magic bullet. Paysafe. Someone really liked Paysafe. Skyhive as well. Well, I told you this case would trigger. HR, data governance, important. HR, data analytics. People being a core in all of the solutions that we finally either find or to implement them internally. It depends. I think we've heard this a lot today. It depends on the use case. It's all about people, like I've said. Great. So I think while this is running in the back, let me nevertheless maybe wrap up what I take with me. So we heard about customer service. We heard about applications in customer engagement, both in insurance as well as in the banking sector. We heard about governance, data mesh. We heard about skills, talent, and organization. So everyone basically said it depends on people, how you structure it, and on the use case. So finding the viable use case and structuring it, cleaning and setting up your data in order to really be able to scale it was what I heard a lot from all of our speakers. Also, start small. We heard, even from Paysafe, it doesn't have to be at the scalability level of a later stage. You can start small and implement it also in the early stages while you grow. And then we saw the complex picture of data mesh, which through the discussion became a bit more clear. And finally, it is really about structuring and people and how you put it into practice with differentiated use cases. So with that, I would like to thank you all for your participation, both everyone that was here and made it through the city of Vienna to our event, and also all of you online. Like I said, this event is recorded, so you can also listen to it later in case you missed one of the cases. And you will find, especially for those online, still our contacts at the end, so you can message all of us, both AI Austria and also us at Accenture, if you have any question or also want to connect to any of the speakers. And without further ado, for everyone that is here, we are inviting you now to a networking where we will be able to talk about all the concepts we have heard today. It's on the 5th floor so that you don't get lost. My colleagues will guide you, and let's hope the weather god will basically follow us and will allow a nice networking for us and for all of you online. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you to AI Austria. Thank you to my team at Accenture, and also the Austrian Bankers Association, FinTech Week organizers, Vienna Business Agency, and FinTech Austria for making this possible. I hope you join us next year. I hope there will be a third round for next year. Thanks a lot. And to all of you, a big clap, I would say.